Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at Closer magazine. Now this is a magazine started by Jamie Owens, who has been working in the skateboard magazine industry for 20 years through Skateboarder magazine and Transworld magazine. And when word got around about a new print magazine coming out for skateboarding, that was met with a lot of curiosity. Because as you know, print is a dying industry, with pretty much only Thrasher being the most well-known magazine still in print today. And I finally got the opportunity to buy the magazine, and is it worth it? Well, let's find out. So after reading this, I find that, in my opinion, this magazine isn't catered toward a young audience. So like your average like high schooler or whatever, try to find out like who's the new hottest skater and all that, and like looking out for video parts or whatnot. This magazine doesn't cover that. I would say it's much more for an older audience or a more mature audience, someone that doesn't really want to look more so on like the skateboarding side of skateboarding, if that makes any sort of sense, but rather behind the scenes skateboarding scene, like industry people or whatnot. And that's actually really interesting because those sorts of interviews don't really get put into like a bigger light than the interviews by skateboarders. Take Thrasher for example. Most of the interviews are going to be interviews by skateboarders saying like, oh hey, what's up? I'm a skateboarder. This is my thing, you know, here's how I got to where I am, is that sort of thing. But there aren't really many interviews that interview the industry people like photographers and skate shop owners. I mean, those interviews exist out there, but again, they're not put to that big spotlight that these other mainstream interviews have. So in this issue of Closer magazine, you have words by Clyde Singletons, Tom Stewart, Tony Hawk, and Chris Rice. And they're not really interviews, they're just kind of like little short paragraphs. But even those short paragraphs makes it really interesting. On the Tom Stewart one, it shows a photo of the most messed up half pipe I've ever seen. Like, even by today's standards, that would be an extremely difficult thing to skate. And then for the actual long multi-page interviews, you have Jay Grant Britton, Mike Gialotti, Louis Lopez, Jason Adams, and John Lucero. And these were honestly really interesting because it goes really in depth about like certain topics. Now for the Jay Grant Britton article, it really goes more into his like earlier years in his career and really like how shooting photos was like back then compared to now. It even talks a little bit about his photo book, Push, and you've all seen the photo before, and I found this one to be really interesting. Now for the next one, the Mike Lottie interview, that one is probably my favorite one because it really talks about how Lottie comes up as to being a skate shop owner, and he doesn't give himself credit for having it being successful. He actually gives that credit to other skate shops that were there before he opened up his shop. And if you're into the whole total drama scene about why Lottie shot down, he actually talks about that a little bit, but doesn't get into too much detail and doesn't drop any names about that. But based on this interview, it shows that he really puts the safety of his people before profits, before anything else. And that is really respectable. Now for the next interview, Louis Lopez. Did you know he was 27? I thought he was like 23, 24. That's insane. Now this interview gives Louis Lopez a bigger stage to really talk about his successes and like how he got to the point where he is today. And one thing that he actually brings that I found interesting is that with the FA videos, they don't really plan them out. They just kind of do them, no plan, put them together, and then just release it. And apparently they just keep doing it because, as you can tell, it's been working so far. And that's something I found really interesting. I really did think that like they had it out all planned where you need to film a thing by a certain date, like how skate videos are usually filmed nowadays. So this whole impromptu filming session sounds really cool. Now for the Jason Adams interview, it really talks about his road to sobriety and how he was struggling with alcoholism for a very, very long time. And it gets really personal with this interview. It's definitely one that I think a lot of people should read about, especially if you are one struggling with sobriety and alcoholism. And as for the last interview, it's going to be about John Lucero. This one's really funny because he basically talks about like his entire skateboard career and all the struggles that he goes to, and he's not even afraid to name drop some people about the people that he had arguments and conflicts with, which I believe he is on good terms with the people that he had conflicts before in his interview. But yeah, I just found this one to be a really interesting and fun one. Now as for the rest of the magazine, so the rest consists of two things, advertisements and photos. And I would say that half of this article is the interviews that I talked about, and definitely worth reading, while the other half is going to consist of photos. And these photos range from the 70s all the way to today's. There's not that many photos because it's not that big of a magazine, but the photos that they choose are really neat and nice. Now, relating back to advertisements, though some people might feel it's disappointing to hear that there's advertisements in the magazine, but to be honest, they actually take up a very small chunk of the magazine. Now, I did count the pages in the advertisements, and the entire magazine is 99 pages, and of those 99 pages, 12 of those pages are used for advertisements. So that leaves you with 87 pages of actual content, and only 12% of the magazine is advertisements. Now, if you were to compare it to Thrasher, this is the July 2022 issue 504 issue. I also did that same count. This one, there were 217 pages in this issue. 124 pages are used for advertisement space. So meaning you only have 93 pages of actual skateboard content, and 57% of the magazine consists of advertisements. So if you were to compare these two, you actually get the similar quantity of content, with obviously this one having less advertisements. And honestly, I really respect that. I was thinking that it might have had a lot of advertisements because since it's a new magazine, it needs that startup money to really print out all the magazines and then ship them off to people. Now, as for the price, the magazine itself is $20. In the US, a yearly subscription is $80, but if you're an international customer, it's $125. And I think that's where the main contention is the price and the subscription price. Personally, while I think the magazine is really good and definitely something worth checking out, I don't know if I'm going to subscribe to it. Depending on how issue 2 comes out, I actually might subscribe. But I'm not quite sure yet because $80 is a little bit steep. That being said, it's not a big publication, it's an independent skateboard magazine, so I understand why the yearly subscription cost is higher. So overall, again, this isn't really catered toward a young audience, it's really more for a matured, much more older audience, and I believe that it's definitely worth checking out if you are interested in any of the people that I talked about. And as time comes, I'm sure the magazine is going to get a lot bigger, have a lot more content and interviews. And I really hope they stay this way. Really talking to some skaters, of course, but also talk to more like behind the scenes people and talk to people who aren't afraid to get personal. So yeah, again, if your shop has it, definitely worth checking it out. Alright, anyways, that has been another video. If you have any questions or think I missed anything, just leave them in the comments below. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.